All right, so welcome to the very first WIRES Rescue 101 webinar, Preparing for Spring. My name is Taryn, and I'll introduce myself more and the team shortly. So I would like to begin with acknowledging that I am hosting this webinar from the lands of the Cammeraygal people and pay respects to their elders past and present and their connection to Australia's native wildlife. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which each of you are learning from, and also any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar tonight. So just a quick overview to begin. Shortly, you'll meet some of the team, then we'll give you an overview of Rescue 101, including why you are such an important part of WIRES. We'll tell you how to get started, give you some tips for spring. We'll talk about the importance of following procedure, where to access further training courses, and we'll take questions at the end. I'm really looking forward to the Q&A we have with Kathleen, who is a fellow Rescue 101 volunteer. And throughout the presentation, if you do have any burning questions, please just pop them in the chat and we'll try and answer them as we go. But we will be here for 45 minutes to an hour. So if possible, try and save your questions until the end of the presentation. Okie dokie. So who am I? I'm Taryn. I'm the Rescue 101 volunteer coordinator. You probably will have received emails from me in the past. I've been with WIRES since January this year, and I started in the WIRES Rescue Office to begin with, and then in March I joined the membership team. I am very passionate about wildlife volunteering. I used to be a wildlife volunteer and carer for a different organisation before I came to WIRES, so it's something that I'm really passionate about. We also have Juliana Gonsalves on the team. She isn't here with us tonight, but she's our volunteer coordinator, mostly supporting our larger membership base. And if you ever decide to complete further training, Juliana would then be your go-to coordinator at WIRES head office. Kaylin McLennan may be familiar to some of you. Kaylin used to be our Rescue 101 volunteer coordinator. She now focuses on WIRES volunteer network, supporting external organisations, and she's also our systems coordinator. So she's our go-to girl for Tall Emu, X Matters and Carer HQ questions. You don't really have much to do with Carer HQ. That is the database that we store all of our animal care records. And if you do further training, you'll learn more about that. And finally, we have the wonderful Rachel Schofield with us tonight, our wonderful membership team manager, who you will hear from shortly as well. But it will mostly be me that you do communicate with while you are a Rescue 101 volunteer. And we do also have Diana Escalante from the WIRES Rescue Office joining us tonight as well. And she will be sharing a little bit about the WIRES Rescue Office with us later. So if you have any questions about the WIRES Rescue Office, also known as the WRO, you can ask Deanna at the end of the presentation. So if you haven't already, please save these contact details in your phone. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you have these details handy, especially when you are out on rescues. These details are also found in your welcome email that you received from either myself or Kaylin, and are not to be confused with the WRO, whose contact details are very, very similar, as you can see. We will talk more about the WRO or the WIRES Rescue Office a little bit later on. So the Rescue 101 course, which you will have already completed, is an introductory course to wildlife rescue, teaching you the basics of how to contain and transport birds, possums, lizards, turtles, and frogs to a local veterinarian for emergency assessment, treatment, and/or euthanasia. But before we move on, Rachel is going to share a little bit of the history of Rescue 101 and how this tier of volunteering came about.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Taryn. So really excited to have you guys here tonight. Really happy that we can touch base with you and answer any of your questions. So thanks so much for coming along and giving up your time, and also just thanks for your passion for wildlife and for putting up your hand to help our precious animals that are in need. So just wanted to give you a bit of background on how and why the whole Rescue 101 tier of volunteering came about, just in case you don't know it's sort of where it came from and where it was where the concept came from. It was launched in March last year, but we had been thinking about the program for probably at least 2 or 3 years prior to that. WISE has been in existence for over 36 years now, so we've been around for quite a long time, and in the last 35 years there was only one tier of volunteering, which was a 2-day course, pretty much one whole day of online course plus 3/4 of a day face-to-face. So it was quite a commitment to become a fully fledged WISE volunteer. And we're also noticing over the past sort of 4 to 5 years that rescue calls that we were receiving for the sort of simple transport of a sick or injured animal to be taken directly to the vet, they were the volumes that were getting higher and higher. And it was these sort of simple rescues for sort of the main species that we get. Birds is by far the highest number of calls that we get through. Possums and then lizards, I guess, is pretty high as well. We just weren't being able to manage those calls. They were, particularly during our spring-summer period when it gets really, really busy, we were having some of those calls. They were the ones that were outstanding for the longest period of time. Often members of the public would be able to do these simple transports for us, but I guess over the last few years, people seem to be getting more time poor, and quite often, I'm sure Deanna and Taryn, who have worked in the rescue office, would vouch for this, that it was getting to be more difficult to ask members of the public to go and transfer these animals to vets. So we wanted to find a faster way to onboard new volunteers, people that would be happy to carry out these rescues with flexibility, not necessarily having to do 10, 15, 20 rescues a week. You could just do one. Some months you might be able to do more, some months you might be able to do less. So we wanted to have a bit of flexibility around it. And particularly over our peak period, if we could build up a base of these, we were calling them animal Ubers at one stage, but we decided Rescue 101 sounded a bit better, and Uber might have been copyrighted, I guess. So the other benefit of having this, army of animal Uber drivers was that this would free up our experienced wildlife rescuers and carers to handle the more difficult rescues, and also to focus on the caring and release tasks, which are the most, really the whole cycle of rescuing an animal, caring for it, and then releasing it at the end is what we aim for. So, a lot of these carers who are really, really passionate, as you would imagine, as we all are, would be struggling to see these X Matters notifications popping up on their phone all the time about these simple rescues while they're feeding their tribe of wildlife at home, and often, around the clock. So the more people we can get to handle these simple rescues to alleviate the pressure on them, the better as well. So it took us a year or two to really come up with the format, create a new training course. We tested it with our Northern Beaches sort of area. We had a couple of days where people could come in and try this new Rescue 101 course and go out and do a few rescues, and we were really happy with the testing process. And so then we launched it in March. So we are really pleased with the numbers so far. We had no idea how well it would go. This time last year we had I think about 150. So gearing up for spring last year, we were really excited to have 150 extra volunteers. We have about 3,500 to 4,000 of the rescue carer volunteers. So this extra 150 we saw would be an awesome addition last spring, which it was. We're now we've just hit the 400 mark. So that's really, really exciting for us. So we're really looking forward to the spring summer, which has obviously just hit us today, and seeing how much more that will contribute to those outstanding rescues. Just to give you an idea, last October, the rescue office was taking around 6,500 rescue calls per week. So, you know, and a lot of those would be these simple rescues that we really desperately need help for. So maybe next year we might hit the magic 1,000 mark, which would be amazing. So we really hope that you guys can also talk about Rescue 101 to your family and friends, and see if we can build that army up. So we've got you know, the Rescue 101 Uber drivers all around, both in regional areas and in Sydney, helping out to what is just such a valuable contribution to our overall rescue care process. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Just a bit of background for you about how it all came about, and we'll give you back to Taryn and she can keep going with her presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Rach. So as you can see, Rescue 101 volunteers are really important for both wildlife and our wildlife carers. So as Rachel already pointed out, our wildlife carers are busy rescuing, rehabilitating and releasing thousands upon thousands of animals around the clock. And it does make it challenging for them to also find time to attend rescues. Caring for wildlife can be a full-time role in and of itself. So having Rescue 101 volunteers such as yourselves that are on hand to assist with rescues really takes the pressure off of WIRE's carers, which then produces more positive outcomes for the wildlife in their care. So faster response times to accepting rescues, containing animals and arriving at the vet means that you are alleviating suffering, and vets are able to provide treatment as quickly as possible. So you, as a Rescue 101 volunteer, are such an important part of a bigger picture. The goal of rehabilitating wildlife is always release of healthy wildlife. So as you can see, your role has a huge impact. So the Rescue 101 course is an introductory course where you learn about basic wildlife rescue and transport. The role itself is flexible, as you've already heard, and you aren't obliged to accept rescues, and you should only accept those rescues that you are actually available for and that you're comfortable to attend, keeping in mind your scope of practice and your authority to rescue. So once you've transported the animal to the vet and updated the WIRE's rescue office, your job is done and the rescue office and trained volunteers will take over from there. So what you can see on your screen there is a quote from Michaela, who was a Rescue 101 volunteer and did some further training to become a rescuer and carer. And she's now able to complete a wider range of rescues for a wider range of species, and she's part of her local WIRES branch. So there are opportunities for you to commit more time and resources to WIRES with further training, and I'll touch on this towards the end of the webinar. So moving on to getting started as a WIRES Rescue 101 volunteer. In this section, we'll go through Tall Emu, X Matters, policies and procedures, and your basic rescue kit. So Tall Emu is where you will find your WIRES volunteer profile. Importantly, you have access to your digital ID, which you can download, so you always have it handy when you're out on rescues. Your digital ID contains your name and your photograph, your WIRES ID number and your authorizations, plus links to the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Licence to rehabilitate sick and orphaned protected animals, and terms and conditions that you should have already familiarised yourself with. And if you haven't, please make this a priority. So you can access your Rescue 101 training manual in Tall Emu, plus the vet list, which is super important for rescues, and you can also see your training history. So your welcome pack, which you receive via email shortly after you complete your training course, contains all of the information that you need to start rescuing. So if you haven't read it, please take the time. It's really, really important. And if you have any questions, just send us an email. So the vet list in Tall Emu is a really important part of each rescue. The vet clinics listed are what we refer to as WIRES recommended vets. It means that they're happy to treat wildlife and are familiar with the WIRES processes. We do our best to build strong relationships with these vets because they do such an amazing job and they often treat wildlife at their own expense. So please use this vet list resource for every single rescue. You can view the vets in a list view or a map view. So those red icons on your screen there are the same as in the app. Just click the icon in the app to change the view. And there's also an option to get directions, which takes you straight to Google Maps, which is very, very convenient. And I encourage you to have a play with the vet list, but also on Tall Emu, and just see what vet list view works best for you. Familiarize yourself with the software. It's fairly easy to navigate, but if you have any questions, again, just send me an email. I'm happy to help. So moving on to X Matters. So X Matters is Wire's rescue communication app. It's been an absolute game changer for wildlife rescue. And thanks to our partnership with Everbridge, we've been able to share this software with other wildlife rescue organizations around the country. So it allows our rescue office to simultaneously alert all of the volunteers within an area to wildlife in need of rescue, which is really cool. And if you haven't already done so, I strongly, strongly recommend that you download the app onto your phone or your device ASAP and start to familiarize yourself with the software. It's fairly easy to use. Make sure you have your notifications enabled so that you don't miss any alerts. And remember, only click attend if you are actually available to attend that rescue at that time. If you're not available, please just ignore the alert. The alert will stay in the active tab until it's either accepted by a volunteer or the WRO terminate the alert. So for those of you who don't have a compatible device, there are other options available to receive rescue alerts, such as email. So please just send me an email if you want more information about other ways that you can receive X Matters alerts. So the full outline of the WRO or the Wires Rescue Office is available in your training manual on pages 7 and 8. But we happen to have Deanna from the Rescue Office here to give you a quick overview of the Wires Rescue Office. So Deanna, if you just want to unmute yourself.
Done. Thanks, Taryn. Yes, I am the Wires Rescue Office trainer. I'm just going to give you a very brief nutshell of essentially of what the WRO does and what they do. The WRO is essentially our call center that the public can actually reach by calling that 1300 number. It operates 24/7, 365 days a year, and our phone coordinators that work in the WRO, their main responsibility is coordinating of sick, injured, or orphaned native wildlife. They are also a wealth of knowledge and provide information and education about native wildlife to the public, about their behavior and how they also add value to our communities as well. Notifications of these rescues are received by the WRO usually through the phone, but we do also receive some emails from members of the public that have filled out rescue forms on our website. What the WRO then does is collects all the relevant details of the rescue, and then they transfer it into the X Matters alert that you then receive via the app. And this information is also stored in a separate database as well for National Parks and Wildlife reporting. So that's it in a nutshell, essentially. I'll pass it back to you, Taryn.
Awesome. Thank you, Deanna. So yeah, that's the WRO in a nutshell. It's a call center and it's linked to the 1300 number that members of the public can call to report an injured animal. So what you can see on your screen there is a very simple step-by-step overview of how it all comes together. So number one, the WRO receive a report from the public about an animal that requires rescue. Number two, the WRO create an X Matters alert and send it to all volunteers in the surrounding area. Now, do keep in mind that we want as many volunteers as possible to receive this alert to increase the chances of each rescue being resolved as quickly as possible. Number three, it's first come, first serve at this point. So once a volunteer hits that attend button, the alert will disappear from the active tab for everyone, including the volunteer that accepted the alert. So the accepting volunteer will then receive a second notification in X Matters with all of the details of the rescue, including the rescue address, the member of public's contact details, and further details of the rescue. Number 4, the volunteer then attends the rescue, making sure to always call them up first where possible and appropriate. Number 5, the volunteer then transports the animal to the vet, always calling ahead where possible and appropriate to let them know that you're coming. And finally, contact the WRO to report where you've taken the animal, as in which vet. And don't forget that you'll need to let them know the call sheet number so that they can update the animal record. So it's very easy to find the call sheet number on the X Matters alert. It literally says call sheet and there's a number next to it. So often when you call the WRO, the first thing that they'll ask for is the call sheet number. So make sure you have it handy. But we'll touch on this again a bit later in the webinar. So here's an example of what you might say when you call the WRO. So, hi, this is Taryn. I'm a Rescue 101 volunteer and I'm calling to report that the ringtail possum from call sheet number 1675915 has been taken to North Shore Veterinary Hospital, Artarmon. Thank you. It's super easy, and the WRO phone coordinators are all really friendly, really professional. And as I said, they'll sometimes ask for the call sheet number up front, so make sure you have it ready. They're also really, really busy, especially come springtime and summertime, so make sure that you're very clear in your communication. Okay, so some very important information that you need to know before you begin rescuing includes the WIRES Codes of Conduct and Ethics plus Policies and Procedures, the National Parks and Wildlife Services Codes of Practice that all wildlife volunteers in New South Wales must adhere to, and the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1979, also known as POCTA. You can find all of this information in the very first chapter of your Rescue 101 training manual, which you can access in Tall Emu. And why is this important? Well, clear processes are required in order for WIRES to operate efficiently, comply with current legislation, and ensure high standards of care. And these guidelines, they set out how volunteers are expected to conduct themselves as representatives of WIRES and how they or how you should deal with animals that you are rescuing and handling. So it is your responsibility as a volunteer to ensure that you adhere to these requirements and that you carry out WIRES procedures to a satisfactory standard. Once again, those magic numbers, I have to reiterate this because it is very important. If you have any questions about an active rescue, or if you need to report an update on a rescue that you have attended, you must report directly to the WIRES Rescue Office. The fastest way to do this is to contact the number there on your screen ending in 3309. This number is for volunteers to contact the WRO directly regarding active rescues, and it's the number that you need to call as soon as you've dropped an animal to a vet to let them know where the animal is so that they can follow up with the vet and take appropriate steps. So again, be sure to always quote your call sheet number, which is on your X Matters alert. And again, in the alert, it literally says call sheet number with the number next to it, so you can't miss it. The rescue equipment is something that we get inquiries about quite a bit. So try not to get too caught up on getting your rescue kit together. It can be as simple as a cardboard box and a towel. Just keep hand sanitizer and a box of latex gloves in your glove box in your car. And honestly, you shouldn't really need a torch in the spring and summer as the days are getting longer, and you won't be assigned rescues after 6 p.m. anyway. You will only ever be assigned rescues between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. and these hours align mostly with vet opening hours. So that's why it's really important as well to always check whether there are vets open in the area where the rescue is before you hit that attend button. The last thing that you want is to end up driving around with an animal in your car, not knowing what to do with it. So cardboard boxes, they're really great because they're easy to come by. They can be flattened for easy storage and either left with the vet with the animal inside the box or just disposed of immediately after use. I recommend going to op shops for things like towels and pillowcases, and just make sure that there are no holes or loose threads that could ensnare little paws and claws. And when using pillowcases, always turn them inside out so that the seam is on the outside. We always want seams on the outside so that the little paws and claws and feathers and things don't get stuck in them. So we often receive donations at head office. So if you're in need of anything in particular, feel free to send me an email and see what we might have that we might be able to provide to you. I can't promise anything, but I will do my best. Otherwise, the best places to find the towels and pillowcases, local op shop, everything else you can get online. I'm so excited to introduce you all to Kathleen Allen. Kathleen has been a Rescue 101 volunteer since October 2021, and she has completed over 40 rescues in that time. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kathleen.
Oh, that's a pleasure, Taryn. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So can you tell us why you chose to become a WISE Rescue 101 volunteer?
Absolutely. Look, it was definitely because of the bushfires a couple of years ago and just the devastation that it caused our wildlife and farm animals. I still get quite upset about it, but like as an animal lover, my heart was breaking. I think I cried every day for months. And while I donated to many charities during that time, including WISE, I just knew deep in my soul that money wasn't enough, and I just had to step out of my comfort zone, put myself out there and just do something on the ground to help. And even though I run a very large business with my partner requiring a lot of my time and energy, deciding to become a WISE Rescue 101 volunteer was just perfect for me, as it affords great flexibility for my limited schedule. And I am doing what I really feel compelled to do, and that's fantastic.
Lovely. So it sounds like you felt really compelled to help wildlife, and we're very, very grateful to have passionate volunteers such as yourself as part of the WISE Volunteer Network.
Thank you.
And it's great to hear that Rescue 101 works for you as well. As you said, it affords you the flexibility that you need to manage your business while allowing you to also contribute to something that you're passionate about at the same time and when you're available.
Absolutely, yeah, because when I was initially starting out, I didn't know how it was going to work being so busy, but this was perfect. Perfect.
Awesome. And now the burning question,
Yes.
How did you build a basic rescue kit and what was it like to start rescuing?
Okay, well, look, to be honest, I found the rescue kit quite easy to build because as living in Randwick, I knew the majority of my rescues were going to basically be mainly birds with the occasional possum. So I just started initially with the pet carrier and, as you mentioned, Taryn, cardboard boxes, just a variety of them, a variety of towels, which, as you said, with no loose threads or holes, and basically just some gloves and some hand sanitizer. That's fine to get started with.
Perfect. Yeah, that's it. That's as simple as it is. And all
Yeah.
of those things you can leave in your car, even boxes, as I said, you can flatten them, leave them in the boot, or you can get a plastic carrier like the one that you can see on the screen there that Kathleen's carrying. You can get those online as well.
That's right. Yeah, I think through Amazon I got mine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that was Amazon, in case anyone missed that. And so what was it like to start rescuing?
Oh, look, to be honest, I was very nervous to start rescuing. So I called the training department, who suggested that I initially attend rescues where the animal was contained, right? And, you know, oh my God, I was just so relieved to hear this. And that advice served me really well for my first 3 rescues. And on the 4th, I went to rescue a little juvenile quail, contained quail. I think you might know where this is going, and discovered that by the time I got there, it had escaped and was now sitting on top of a very high curtain rail. And there were 2 adults and 3 children sort of standing around me, eagerly awaiting for the wise expert to catch it. So, you know, to cut a long story short, you know, I did end up catching it. And, you know, I think it's just amazing that when you are thrown into a situation like that, you just seem to be able to find this, you know, inner calm, focus and inspiration to do what is required to serve that bird or that animal at that moment. And, you know, that made me feel good about myself. And it also gave me that extra confidence to actually go to other jobs where the animal wasn't necessarily contained. And I guess it also taught me very early on to, you know, expect the unexpected and, you know, where appropriate, make sure you maintain a very good sense of humour.
Definitely great advice. I love that story. And yes, every rescue is completely different, and
Yes.
animals, as we all know, can be very, very unpredictable. So it is important to be adaptable in this role and know how to access support. And people don't know whether you're experienced or not, as you say. All they know is that you're trained, that wires sent you. So there is an expectation that you are there to save the day, but in some cases this isn't possible. And in these cases, it's always good to contact the rescue office if you feel like you're out of your depth. Definitely contact the rescue office, let them know what's going on, and just wait for further instructions. And so it's one thing to feel compelled to take action, I guess, but another to actually take action.
Yeah.
So, Kathleen, what motivates you to continue to be a Rescue 101 volunteer?
Okay. Look, I am very passionate about it, and like you all are, and playing even a small part in helping to save our wildlife. I mean, it just touches me very deeply. And, you know, also I think being able to engage with people who share a common cause and purpose, you know, through the WISE community, it does help me feel really connected to the best of humanity, you know, from the members of the public who, you know, care deeply enough to contact WISE, you know, the staff at all the vet clinics that we attend to, and the, you know, amazing WISE personnel in the, you know, WISE rescue office, who are always so, you know, kind and grateful, you know, when I call in to report on the outcome of a rescue. And also too, I think another thing that keeps me motivated is that, you know, in my experience when I'm on a rescue, there is just so much goodwill bestowed on me as a WISE volunteer that, you know, when I come home, my heart is just filled up knowing that, you know, I've done my best, I have been of service, and, you know, and hopefully I've made a difference. And, you know, and quite honestly, I am a better person on the day I do a rescue, and even my partner will attest to that. So that's what keeps me going.
Oh, that's lovely.
Oh.
And I guess, you know, each rescue that gives you a sense of accomplishment. But I also feel like that also motivates a lot of wildlife volunteers out there as well. So it's always important to, I guess, remind ourselves that to us, it might feel like a small role that we play, but for that one animal that we are able to help, that we're able to rescue and transport to a vet, it means the world, you know. And so we are all part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And lastly, Kathleen, what advice would you give to newer Rescue 101 volunteers?
Well, you know, obviously, you know, we are all very different, I guess, and we do have to find our own way on this path. Like personally, when I started, I made a conscious effort to decide to do 3, rescues a week, because I just wanted to gain as much experience and knowledge and momentum as I could, just to help me feel more confident and at ease with the whole process. And of course, the learning is only through the doing. And but I would just say, to people who are, maybe having trouble starting, or if you're doubting yourselves for whatever reason, just trust WISE, trust the course that you have just been on, follow all of the guidelines, and also just trust that you are here for a reason. Because, at the end of the day, we're all here to help our beautiful wildlife. And as Rescue 101 volunteers, as it's already been discussed, we've really only got one job, and it's to, and it's just so vitally important, it's just to collect that animal and take it to the nearest vet clinic for its best possible outcome. And whatever that may be. And after that, anything after that is just totally out of our control. And I guess, even though we don't always get to see each other, on a day-to-day basis, sometimes it sort of feels like you're working in a bit of a void, but, we are all connected, and we are all on this path, and on this beautiful path. And it's just, a pleasure to share this, very precious journey with you all. It's really been a huge gift to me. And so thank you. Thank you very much.
I might just answer the little question, if you don't mind, Taryn, in the chat. Even though we'll have some question time at the end, it might be a good opportunity for
go for
you
it.
to have a sip of water and take a breath.
Yeah.
But it is a really good question, and I noticed that 2 people have asked the same question, Fiona and Leanne. So thanks so much for bringing this up. And it has been something that we've discussed a lot internally. The idea that maybe you'd like to connect with other Rescue 101 volunteers, or even other fully fledged WISE members within your area. We've put a lot of thought into this, but we still, that's why it's really good having these webinars, because we want to hear from you as to, how you're tracking and whether you do want to have that involvement or whether you don't. So as I said, it's a relatively new program, so I'm sure it will morph into something probably, different to what it is now, or if it's working, we won't change it. But one of the things that we found from a lot of the questions we asked our Rescue 101 volunteers from the early days was that they actually kind of wanted to be flexible, and they wanted to just be able to commit when they could, and when they, and they didn't really want to have that sort of community involvement. They just wanted to be able to pick up a basket and go out and do a rescue, and not have to sort of worry about being on the committee, or being asked to go do fundraisers and so forth. So I guess the way we're looking at Rescue 101 at the moment is that if you do want to become more involved in the branch as a whole, you would then go on to do the immediate care course, which is the other half of the training that you need to do to become a WISE member, as in a fully fledged member. And then you would join a branch, and you could do more with the committee and become involved. The only other thing, though, that I will add to that is that we do feel that there possibly would be an opportunity to buddy people up in the Rescue 101 sense, because we know from our members' point of view, the fully fledged members, that they really do love having, and as Kathleen said, it's really quite getting confidence up to do that first rescue is probably the biggest step you'll ever take. So, if we could come up with a system, we'll probably need to put a bit more thought into it. But if we could come up with a system where, you could have a buddy to go out in your first few rescues. But don't forget the rescue office, the 89773309 number. They're your buddy. If you're worried and you go out to a rescue and you really don't feel sure, or you can't find the animal or the location, you just ring that number, and it's a priority line. You generally don't have to sit on hold for a long time, and they can talk you through anything. So we sort of, as I said, we're sort of morphing through and deciding where this is going to take us. But if you do want to take that next step and become more involved in your branch, you can still just continue to do the same rescues that you're doing now, but you can also have more contact with the people that are in the branch. But some people just don't want that. They just want to have the flexibility of being just a rescuer, and to be able to call the rescue office if they want any help, and to go on that way. So watch this space, but you know, feel free if you are feeling nervous about a first rescue. We could always have a look in the system and email someone else that we know that lives near you and say, look, you know, Amanda wants to go out to first rescue. Maybe we could hook you up, and we certainly wouldn't disclose any contact information without getting your permission. But that might be a way that we could do it, just for, you know, just for if you really, really felt you needed that help. Does that answer that question? Okay, do you think? What do you think, Kathleen? Does that?
Oh, look, absolutely. Well, when I first started, I actually asked if there was a buddy system. But, you know, but I also completely understand where you're coming from as well. I mean, it's not a problem for me to be sort of like, you know, doing this just as it is, because it feels like a little mini own job. And I do feel there is just so much support out there from the WISE community. And it was one thing I actually forgot to say at the end, you know, in terms of my advice is, you know, never be scared to ask for help, because the WISE people are unbelievable. Their knowledge is extraordinary. And also too, they are always so grateful and you know, for our service and help. And I love that. You know, it's just, it's beautiful. So so yes, to anybody out there, just please use them as a resource. They're so willing to do that.
And also, you know, some of the rural areas, we only have, you know, 2 or 3 Rescue 101 volunteers so far, but over the next year or so, we're really hoping that will grow, and we might start to think of a way that we can get you all to be a bit more communicative in your little areas. But in the meantime, we kind of think it's all working okay, but we just need you to feel confident and to want to go out there and do those rescues. So feel free to touch base with Taryn if you need any more support.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rach. And thank you, Kathleen. Thanks for sharing with us tonight. You're so inspiring, and I'm sure that your insights have answered a few questions, hopefully, and boosted some confidence amongst the viewers tonight. So thank you so much for sharing.
No, that's my pleasure. It's just that first one that you've got to get under your belt.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know, once you know the processes as well, it will make it a lot more easier as well. But you have to, I guess you have to do it and experience it for yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on with a WIRES fact. The rainbow lorikeet is the most commonly rescued species by WIRES volunteers. So other common species that you will encounter as a Rescue 101 volunteer include brushtail and ringtail possums, blue-tongued lizards, sulfur-crested cockatoos, magpies, noisy miners, kookaburras, and also tawny frogmouths, among many other species. Which brings us to the next section of the webinar, where we'll give you an overview of the spring season for WIRES. So spring marks the beginning of the busy season for wildlife volunteers. In the springtime, wildlife become more active, many species breed, and we see an increase in the amount of young rescued, but also people and their pets become more active, and therefore wildlife encountering traffic and predators is it's inevitable, really. So this also means that there are more people out and about to find and report sick and injured wildlife to WIRES. So in the springtime, you will commonly encounter birds, especially fledglings, but do keep in mind that uninjured chicks and fledglings should be reported to the WRO. So some birds learn to fly from the ground up, such as your noisy miners and magpies, and should be left alone as long as their parents are attending. Some chicks can be reunited with their parents if they're healthy, but this is a job for an experienced avian rescuer and not for Rescue 101. So if you come across any instances where you see healthy fledglings on the ground or healthy chicks, please call the rescue office to report this straight away and wait for further advice. So you'll also encounter lizards, such as blue-tongued lizards, who often come into contact with dogs and cats, unfortunately, and they require immediate vet treatment. Female freshwater turtles, they start to nest around mid to late spring, usually October, November, and the female turtles can travel kilometres looking for suitable nesting grounds, often crossing busy roads on the way, and they're commonly reported with injuries to their shells, and they require immediate vet treatment. And in the wet weather, you're also likely to see an increase in turtle rescues as well. So you'll also come across both ringtail and brushtail possums. These rescues increase in the warmer months, and it's important to look out for possum joeys who may have fallen off mum or be nearby. Ringtail possums will often have twins or triplets. And if you find a healthy orphaned joey, you need to contact the WRO immediately and await further instructions. So vet clinics are really stressful environments for wildlife. So the WRO can make arrangements for an experienced carer to pick up healthy orphaned wildlife rather than us sending them to a vet clinic who is likely already very busy or already at capacity, and where they might feel really stressed in that environment. Common causes of injuries to wildlife include vehicle strikes or hit by car, as you will see it written in X Matters alerts, diseases such as beak and feather disease that you learned about in your Rescue 101 course. It is highly contagious among parrot species and untreatable, leading to certain death, and also stress dermatitis, which commonly affects adult brushtail possums, and if left untreated can also lead to a painful death, unfortunately. So you can see how quick responses to X Matters alerts is really important to relieve pain and suffering of a lot of animals. Kookaburras and lorikeets are common victims of flying into windows or window strikes, as we commonly refer to them as, and so are young birds learning to fly. And finally, dog and cat attacks, of course, really common, especially for lizards and frogs and young birds and possums as well. So again, WIRES really tries to nurture our relationship with vet clinics who are always busy and often treat wildlife at their own expense. So when interacting with vet staff, please be patient and polite and help them to help you make the handover of the animal as smooth as possible. So there are several ways that you can do this. Firstly, check that a nearby clinic is open before accepting a rescue. Call ahead if possible to let them know that you're coming. Wait patiently to be seen. Hand over the animal plus a quick overview of the condition if you know it. If the animal was contained when you picked it up from the member of public and you haven't actually seen the animal, just give them an overview according to what you know from the X Matters alert. That's completely fine. You're not expected to be an expert in this. Give the vet the call sheet number and call the WRO to report the name of the vet clinic that you took the animal to, and let them take it from there. So as much as we would love to know the outcomes of all of the vet drop-offs that we do as Rescue 101 volunteers, it just isn't sustainable for hundreds of volunteers to be contacting vets for updates on wildlife. So please be very mindful of this. This is the WRO's job. So if you want to follow up on a case, you should email the WRO with the call sheet number and wait patiently for a response. Please avoid contacting vets directly to check in or follow up. Also be mindful that the WRO are also really busy. And lastly, vets are experts in their field, and WIRES works with vet clinics to ensure that wildlife are receiving appropriate assessment and treatment. So always remain polite and professional, but if you do have a negative experience with a vet clinic, please do report it to us via email. And I would also let the phone coordinator know when you contact the WRO, just to update them on the animal and on the circumstances surrounding your experience at the vet, just so that they're aware and then they can manage the case accordingly, because don't forget that they're going to be calling the clinic to follow up with the vet as well. So Deanna, did you want to add anything there?
I think you've covered most of it, actually. Keeping
Okay.
it simple. Don't want to complicate it too much.
No, of course not. Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. So procedure is super, super, super important. Always follow procedure to maintain personal safety, keep others safe, save vets and the WRO time, ensure rescue resolve is seamless, and of course, importantly, animal welfare. So it's really important that you don't stray from the procedures that you have been trained to follow. These procedures are put in place to protect you, to protect those around you, to save vets time, and ultimately to ensure animal welfare. If you have any questions at any time about procedure, please contact me, or you can refer to your training manual, which by now you should all know is in Tall Emu. Wildlife rescue can be physically, mentally, and emotionally challenging. Please, please, please make sure that you do look after yourself and reach out to the team, myself, if you have any concerns or you need any further support. Contact me if you need to, and I'm more than happy to put you in touch with our volunteer support manager. Her name is Annette. If you require even further support. So in the spring, you will receive an increase in alerts. So it's important to be prepared for this and only accept rescues that you are able to attend. So before we take care of wildlife, I have to remind you that we must first take care of ourselves. So as frontline volunteers attending our most urgent cases, you will come across some quite distressing scenarios, such as injured animals and also distressed people. So if you ever need to debrief after a rescue, please do not hesitate to get in touch. So you will receive regular emails from the membership team regarding mental health and wellbeing, and the resources are there for you to utilize, and they're usually always free, which is fantastic. And I do want to add that euthanasia can also be incredibly distressing for some volunteers, but do keep in mind that vets make this call based on injuries and, of course, codes of ethics and practice that take into account things like viability for release and among many other things, of course. So relieving suffering of sick and injured wildlife is a huge part of wildlife volunteering, and it's really important to be prepared for this. And again, seek emotional support if you need to. Once again, refer to your codes of ethics and your codes of practice, which are available in your training manual, just to get some more insight around euthanasia if you need to. So Wires and Black Dog Institute have been working together since the 2019-2020 bushfires, and they offer free ongoing support to wildlife volunteers, which means that you also have access to these resources, which is fantastic. And if you haven't already received one of our regular mental health and wellbeing emails, you will do shortly, because Are You OK Day is next week, and we will be checking in with you. So on the screen there, I've also added a few podcast recommendations for anyone that is interested in Australian native fauna. My favourite by far is ABC's Off Track, where Dr. Anne Jones interviews all the latest wildlife researchers who have so much to teach us about the wildlife in our own backyards. And some of these episodes also feature Wires volunteers. I found this podcast really helpful, actually, when I was working in the Wires Rescue Office. I love it. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly recommend the podcasts that you see there on your screen. We need all hands on deck this spring. So the training and knowledge provided to Rescue 101 volunteers allows you to assist with simple rescues of birds, possums, lizards, turtles, and frogs, where these animals require immediate rescue and transport to a vet. So we're always, always, always on the lookout for more volunteers. So now that you know more about Rescue 101 volunteering, share it with your friends, share it with your family, and all you have to do is share the link to the Wires website, encourage them to read the Rescue 101 info pack, which is available on the website also, and you can encourage them to enroll to start rescuing wildlife this spring. And if you are someone that has experience, you can always provide support to your family member or your friend as they start their Rescue 101 journey as well. Or if they have any questions, just put them in touch with me. I'd be happy to have a chat with them. So the immediate care course, also known as the ICC, is for Rescue 101 volunteers who wish to further their training and learn to rescue a greater range of species, as well as provide immediate care for up to 24 hours. So the course itself is far more in depth and includes a workshop. It's far more in depth than the Rescue 101 course on its own. And the ICC also includes a workshop, which can be online or face-to-face, depending on your preferences. And it covers things like wildlife first aid, physical examinations and immediate care, plus common rescue scenarios and species information. And it goes into much greater detail, as I said before, than the Rescue 101 course. And it costs $100 to enroll in this course. So after completing the ICC, you'll be able to receive rescue alerts for more rescues and more species, report to species coordinators, provide immediate emergency care for up to 24 hours, become an active member of your local WIRES branch, which Rachel touched on earlier, access even more training such as species courses, and work your way towards becoming a carer. So if you'd like more info about the ICC, please send me an email and I'll get that info across to you. Okay, so to wrap up our webinar for tonight, here's what you need to not only be an efficient Rescue 101 volunteer this spring, but also to ensure your own personal health and safety. Become familiar with Tall Emu and what it offers, including your digital ID, your training manual, and of course, and very importantly, the vet list. Download X Matters app to start receiving rescue alerts. If you have any issues logging onto Tall Emu or logging onto X Matters, please send me an email and I will help you. Also, don't forget to save important contacts in your phone for when you're out on rescues. Gather enough basic equipment to start rescuing. Again, it can be as easy as a cardboard box and a towel. Familiarize yourself with codes of conduct, ethics, policies, and procedures, which you can find in your training manual on Tall Emu. Also access free mental health resources if you need further support. And if you want links to all of those, please send me an email, just get in touch and I'll send those out to you. And always feel free to reach out to myself and the rest of the team if you have any questions or concerns or require further support in your role as a Rescue 101 volunteer. And that concludes the Rescue 101 Preparing for Spring webinar for tonight. If you have any questions for either myself, for Rachel, for Kathleen, or even for Deanna from the WRO, just pop it in the chat or you can raise your hand or unmute yourself.
So there's a few in there already, and there's a couple that I can answer pretty easily. So I might start with those. So Anne-Marie, you would have received an invitation to join X Matters in your welcome email, but I have just made a note of that, and Taryn will contact you by email tomorrow and just remind you of what your X Matters login details are and let you know how to get X Matters installed, because that's really vital in order to be able to start rescuing. I'll answer Jackie as well. WISE in the ACT. No, we don't cover the ACT, but the organisation that does cover the ACT are on X Matters, because we have been able to, Taryn touched on this, we've been able to offer X Matters to other organisations thanks to generous donation of licences from X Matters and their parent company Everbridge. So we do a lot of work with the ACT Wildcare ACT, that doesn't sound right, but I think that's what they're called. No, ACT Wildlife. I knew that wasn't right. There's so many wild cares and so many wildlifes around. So we do work very closely with them. And part of, from the bushfire aftermath, part of the idea with all of the funds that we were so generously granted through that period was that we would be helping nationally other smaller organisations, and one of the great ways we've been able to do that is by sharing our training and our systems with other organisations. So they've been most grateful for that. I think maybe Deanna could answer the one about Fiona has asked about that she saw a pelican rescue a few weeks ago. I would imagine that it probably would have only been put on if it was a contained pelican rather than a pelican that needed rescue, because otherwise it wouldn't have been put on, but it could have been one that just slipped by that wasn't meant to be put on for Rescue 101ers.
Yeah, I think sometimes some rescues can be a little tricky to decide what might be appropriate for Rescue 101. So I'm not familiar with this exact rescue. I would imagine that perhaps if it was a young pelican, that could be easily contained, or if it was already a contained animal, it could potentially be appropriate for a rescue 101er. If it was just a very large adult-sized pelican, I would imagine that'd be quite difficult. So it could have just been one that slipped through. So whenever you see something like that, obviously, if you're not feeling confident, do not accept it. And you can always call the rescue office to ask more questions about it.
Great, thanks, Deanna. A printable version of the training manual. That's a very, very good question. I
That's
know
a yes.
that it's a yes. There you go. Thanks, Taryn. So they just email you if they want to get a printable version?
If you do want a printable version, I think they are limited, but I can request one from the training team and we can send that out to you if you need. So yeah, just send me an email if you'd like a printable version of the training manual.
Cool. And Fiona's just asked, just mentioned that some mentoring would be great. So yeah, we're definitely going to take that into account and the possibility of budding. But I think in the meantime, take Kathleen's advice. I think she said in one of her quotes, you put on your big girl pants and get out there and have a go.
But also, I think a really good way to start is to only accept your first few rescues, only accept those where the animal is already contained.
Yep.
Because you don't really have to do anything in that situation. You just have to go and collect the box that the animal is already contained in and drop it off at the vet. And this helps you to, I guess, practice the going through the process. So the steps that you need to take in order to complete the rescue and report the rescue to the WRO. So starting off with contained animals is probably the best way for you to get a little bit of experience and gain some confidence.
And just to your last comment there, Fiona, you don't have to stress so much about the best way to care for the animal, because your objective is just to get that animal to the closest vet as quickly as possible. Obviously, you need to make sure it's contained and nicely in your car so that it's not going to fall over in the car and so forth. But caring about it really only is making sure it's contained in a box and getting it to the vet. So if you want to go on and do further training, then you would be eligible to care for animals for a longer period of time. But as far as Rescue 101 goes, they're all relatively simple rescues. But as Kathleen said, you still have to be prepared for the unexpected when you go out to any rescues. So even though the rescue office might think initially this seems like a really easy one for a Rescue 101er, you might get out there and it might not be as simple as the member of the public had told the rescue office. So prepare for the unexpected. Always call the 309 number if you feel you're out of your depth, and they can always send another rescuer out, a more experienced rescuer out as well.
Yep, absolutely. If in doubt, call the rescue office or call me. I think there was a question from Josh McDade, just asking about regional confusion between different state parks laws. So Josh,
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I guess all of the wildlife organisations within New South Wales, they all hold a licence from New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife. So we all have an obligation to report wildlife rescues to National Parks and Wildlife. So I guess whatever area you live in, if you find, or if a member of the public finds an injured native animal, they need to report it directly to the local wildlife rescue organisation that operates within that region. In some regions, they may overlap slightly, the borders.
I think you're probably talking about sort of Albury-Wodonga, that sort of situation.
Yeah, but look, it's
it's probably more for a branch. The branches probably know a lot more about that, particularly I think it's Murray River branch that operates out of Albury-Wodonga, or out of Albury, I should say. So they would know a lot more about what the Victorian rules are as opposed to the New South Wales rules, and they'd be, I guess, equipped to manage that. So it probably doesn't really come into effect too much for the Rescue 101 side of things.
Yeah, so when a member of the public reports an animal to the rescue office, they can see whether or not the animal is actually within a WIRES area. And, you know, we won't be sending any rescues out to volunteers that aren't within an area that WIRES covers. So you don't really have to worry about that too much. So I hope that answers your question, Josh. So, okay. If we
Any
don't
more questions, or does
have...
anybody want to share a quick rescue story? I mean, we wanted to keep this to sort of an hour and sort of 15 at the most, just so that you can all get on with your evenings. But if anybody else has anything to share, please let us know.
All right, well, we might wrap it up. So thanks, Rachel, Deanna, and Kathleen for joining us and sharing tonight. And thanks to all of our Rescue 101 volunteers that joined us tonight. And most of all, thank you for your dedication to WIRES and, of course, our precious native wildlife.
There's one more, last one from Susan.
Oh, possum joeys go to a carer, not a vet. Yes, okay. And how, okay, so the question is, Taryn, I think you mentioned earlier that possum joeys go to a carer, not a vet. How will we know this? So you won't receive any X Matters alerts where an animal requires care. So if it's a healthy joey possum and the WRO has determined this, then they will send an X Matters alert directly to our possum carer groups. You won't receive any alerts of that nature. If the WRO believe that, according to the MOP, the possum joey might be injured, then there may be an instance where you do receive an X Matter alert for a possum joey. But if you ever do get to a rescue, or you find yourself in a situation where you think that you have a possum joey that is completely healthy and you're not comfortable taking it to a vet, call the WRO immediately. Let them know the situation. You can send them a photograph via text message, and they will be able to tell you what to do in that situation. Just they'll be able to instruct you accordingly, because if it is a healthy baby possum, we don't really want it to go to a vet and get stressed out at the vet. We want it to go straight to a experienced possum carer. So if you do ever find yourself in a situation where you're a little bit unsure, call the WRO immediately and just await further instructions. So yeah, you won't ever receive an X Matters alert for a healthy possum if the WRO have already determined that the possum joey is healthy. They'll send the alert straight to the possum carer group. So I hope that answers your question, Susan.
Taryn, can I quickly jump in on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the most important thing would be to call the WRO if you're ever in doubt about anything, any rescue that you're attending. But with that, there might be some exceptions. For example, if the member of the public has expressed that they are leaving the site, maybe instead of leaving an uncontained vulnerable animal out in the open, the WRO might sometimes make that call to take it at least to a vet. But we would still be sending those out to carers. So there might be some exceptions where the WRO have made decisions for healthy animals to go to vets, but it won't be very common. We will try carers first, and there'll be some exceptions to that.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks,
Oh,
Deanna.
thanks for your comments, Susan. That's so heartwarming. Kathleen, you can be proud that you've given Susan the confidence to get out there now. So that's amazing. That's really made my day. You're on mute, Kathleen.
Mine too. Thank you so very much, Susan. Honestly, it is just about getting out there and doing it. The learning is in the doing.
In the doing, exactly. Perfect end to the session. And thanks, Taryn. That was an amazing presentation, and it has been recorded. Thanks for everybody for allowing us to do that. So we will actually circulate the recording to other Rescue 101 volunteers that couldn't make it tonight. So hopefully they'll enjoy watching it after the fact. And we will try and do one of these quarterly, I'd say. And if you've ever got any ideas for any other topics you'd like covered, just email Taryn at rescue101@wise.org.au.
Perfect. Thanks, Rach. And thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Rhonda.
Happy rescuing.
Bye, Sarah. Bye,
Bye,
Amanda.
everyone.
Bye, Kathleen.
Bye. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.